Okay, good morning. We're sitting here this morning with Dr. Roger Joe from Yale. Welcome.
Thank you.
Dr. Joe is a psychiatrist and a researcher at Yale Child Study Clinic, and you've been there for the past 20 years.
Yeah, I've been at Yale for, since 2004.
2004.
So I started as an intern.
As an intern? That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I know in 2014 is when you founded the Community Autism Socials at Yale, or you do call it CASY or CASY?
I call it CASY.
CASY.
Only because that's what everyone else calls it.
CASY.
So by consensus, it's CASY.
Yeah. Well, as a matter of fact, that's how I first met you, because the program provides free social, recreational, educational, and support for folks with autism across the country, actually.
And yeah, absolutely. And I think that the last part, across the country, is something that's relatively new. One of the ways that we made a pivot to online programming, and we found that sort of a silver lining in this whole COVID pandemic, that our reach has been even greater than before.
Yeah, that's terrific. The silver linings. Now I know you're also the lead investigator for Spark at Yale, and you're this year's Northern Lights sponsor for our Water Lantern celebration. So thank you for being our primary sponsor.
My pleasure. I mean, I really admire the work you do, and the visual of the lanterns is quite amazing. So when the opportunity came up, let's do it.
It's fabulous. So Spark is the largest genetic study of autism ever in the country, correct?
Yes.
And Yale is just one of the dozens of participating research centers across the country.
That's correct. So Spark, which stands for Simon's Foundation, Powering Autism Research and Knowledge, is a project that's led by the Simon's Foundation Autism Research Initiative. So that's the sponsor of the study. And since the study is looking for all folks on the autism spectrum, and it's looking for, the question is trying to answer, require, that there be, thousands of participants. So in order to actually accomplish that, the foundation partners with many autism research centers across the United States, to provide education and guidance on decision making and how to actually participate in the study.
That's terrific. Now I know, as I said earlier, we connected years ago when my daughter began doing some of your programs at CASY. Mm-hmm. And actually, CASY was in part what helped us to develop our social gatherings here at the Nest. You and I met.
Yeah, I remember that was nice.
It talked about the changes and things you had made in your program since you had been ahead of us by a couple of years and partnered with us. So, and again, our mission is to help promote social and employment opportunities for young adults with disability. So we have a common mission. Can you tell us a little bit about what it is about our mission that resonates with your work?
Sure. So, there is a common thread through everything that we do. And I think that between the two of us and certainly other organizations out there, there's a big diversity in how we provide help, how we support the autism community. I think really the main purpose is about quality of life, or improving quality of life for neurodiverse people. Our focus is focused on the autism spectrum, and there's so many ways to do that. Certainly, we ourselves cannot pursue every single way to improve quality of life. But the best way is to help and learn from others who are doing the same thing, and seeing how you guys are doing it, is really aligns with how our overall mission of improving quality of life. So we certainly you may offer the social groups, but I think that your organization and how it supports sort of hands-on employment, sort of where the rubber meets the road, is very appealing to us. And like my chemistry professors always told me, like attracts like. So you sort of naturally gravitate towards organizations like yours because we're partners.
And I know we've really appreciated and grown from that. As a matter of fact, you brought your video arcade game setup to Deep River.
Yes.
Was that about a year ago? You set up our public library with, I don't even remember how many kind of old-fashioned retro video games with all of this amazing technology that you had. Those collaborations are just what keeps us all going.
Yeah, so, and this is part of the spirit of our work together, is that the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes more than that, to have a community that's open to all neurodiverse people and sort of supports them in all different ways that they like to be supported. We all can't do it all, but between all of us, we all have something to offer. And the whole thing as a package, kind of works synergistically. So, was that the sum of the parts? The whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
Yeah. Well, you're a pretty modest guy, but it was pretty impressive to see a psychiatrist show up with a van full of all this high technology and know how to set it up. And I know you're running a classic car meetup now too, where you're going to be coming to the Nest with your classic car group. And you're a pretty well-rounded guy. And
actually, with the car thing, I'm less of a classic car guy because I guess I didn't grow up around classic cars, but I do like muscle cars. So we'll have a sensory-friendly car show.
Yeah, I'm excited about bringing that to the Nest. That would be great.
Yeah, but just to sort of follow up on what the comment you gave is that as a psychiatrist, there's certain stereotypes about how psychiatrists help people. And
you're not it.
Yeah, I never agreed with the traditions. A lot of the traditions just didn't seem to fit. When you're helping with populations that are, say, different from, or have other needs than, say, the everyday person out there. So that model found to not work that well. So you sort of venture out and you try a lot of other things. And the great thing is that a lot of this stuff also aligns with my own personal interests. So it's almost like it never feels like work.
Well, I know, my daughter is a pretty tough judge of character. And she instantly, when she met you, Dr. Joe became the guy that she definitely trusted and enjoyed being with. So that's pretty high praise. Well, let's get to Spark, because I know you've been leading that study at Yale, looking at genetics of autism and are on the forefront of bringing more understanding to autism to help support all of these folks who are kind of living that neurodiverse life. So, but it's pretty unique, and I know there's maybe some misconceptions out there. And tell us more about Spark at Yale and how folks can be connected.
Sure. Well, so I guess there's so many different things out there that I've heard when I've talked to other people about Spark. So just to start out, Spark has been around for several years. So already the study has had a lot of momentum, across the United States, and people who are on the spectrum and their family members participating. So tens of thousands of people have already participated across the United States. It is primarily, at least at this point, the focus is the saliva samples, which is used for the genetics part of the study. But that's not all that Spark is. It's actually when you enter a community of researchers, and families, and other folks who are on the spectrum, and you sort of become involved in the research process. So it's not so much of a one and done type of ordeal, unless you want it to be. But there's continued invitation, engagement in the projects that are evolving, or the current projects that are existing. So folks who are in the community, can really participate in research, but also they have an influence, on how the research is, what kind of research is done, and the answers that are asked, and certainly, some of the questions, that are thought to be important. So that was sort of a break from the old model, whereas you had folks who are sort of in the ivory tower, trying to come up with questions. Then you have people in the community, and this really tries to bridge the gap. So I think one of the most exciting things is that people in the community actually can shape the research and the future of the research. That's I think one of the more exciting things about it. Also with genetics, and I should really emphasize that SPARK is not a study that's looking for a cure for autism in any way, shape, or form. And I'd like to emphasize that, because that's one of the common misconceptions that I hear. It's also not looking for testing, or genetic tests to diagnose. That's also not in the works.
And I think that's really important, because I know for so many people who are neurodiverse and on the spectrum, they're not interested in a cure either, or changing who they are. But I think the hope from some people is if there's a better understanding of what is happening inside their wiring and in their body that might be impacted by that autism, is can you improve, like you said, the quality of their lives by learning more about how autism is impacting them in many ways. Because I think you mentioned there's a few impacts that are very consistent that are not about how they process information or socially interact. You talked about the digestive system.
Yes.
I know for our family that rings true. So
there's a lot of conditions that are associated with autism, and like digestive issues, seizures, for instance, are not uncommon. The more we know about the underlying neurobiology, and that includes genetics, then the better we are at working on interventions, if that's what's needed, and prevention. So use the knowledge, really with the long-term goal of improving people's quality of lives. Knowledge is very powerful, and we get that. In the past, people have misused it, but in Spark, not everyone will have access to this information, and privacy is very, very important. Spark study cannot share information without consent. So one of the things that participants will notice when they first start to sign up is there's a pretty extensive consenting process. Certainly it takes more time to go through, but that consent really is a reflection of how careful the organization is about making sure people understand sort of pros and cons, and certainly there are protections and what they can do within the study, and it's completely voluntary, so people can opt out at any time.
Yeah, that's I think really important for people to understand that. What are you most excited about regarding the Spark study?
There's so many things that are great potentials in the study. I think one of the things I mentioned before is that the ability for community to sort of really participate, and influence, the future of autism research. And you've got hundreds of, tens of thousands of people across the country sort of weighing in, on this research. So that's powerful information about how research should be done and the kinds of research we should conduct. And that, I believe, is going to help researchers, really narrowly focus and work on questions, that are most important to the people that they're trying to help. So, having a better, improving research is very exciting. But there's also this community aspect of it. So, there's the SPARK community, and even as a site, as we've participated in SPARK, we've certainly broadened or met a lot of new people, and sort of came into our community, the CASY community. And if you can sort of see this on a larger scale, things like this happening across the country, it also facilitates a lot of community connection. Third thing I can think of is really the use of our knowledge in neurobiology, including genetics, and tailoring interventions if they're needed, or preventative measures. So I think most parents, folks on the spectrum, or anybody who's in mental health treatment, have maybe experienced this trial and error aspect, of say medications, like certain meds, they don't side effects. We don't know who's going to work for who's going to have what side effect. So there's this process where you're sort of trying things out, and a lot of times you have to try multiple things. So to get around that, we could use biological information to help predict who might respond to our treatments and get to a better intervention or treatment as quickly as possible.
Great. And having Yale in our backyard here in Deep River is kind of amazing to have access to this so close. I know you already mentioned about the very important fact that you're not looking for a cure for autism. I know it's always difficult for people to talk about being involved in a study, and there's genetics involved. Just can you tell us a little bit more that might ease people's minds if they are interested in learning more?
Sure. So security is taken very, very seriously. So from the consenting process, you would do this online, and even when you create an account online, you'll find that the passwords even have to be robust. So you can't use your regular.
No name of your dog.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, there's an algorithm in the system that assures that the passwords are strong enough. And so I think even through that front door, you're getting the sense that all this information, is kept very secure. Encrypted servers, password protected, backed up. But it is a lot of information. So the way that it's done is that people who are enrolled, who contribute information, all their personally identifying information is taken out and replaced with a say random number. So when information is shared with researchers, it's not in a way that people can identify the person or the individual connected to that information, because it's de-identified. So I think that's a pretty big thing. Unlike some of these services that you might have that tries to assess your say ethnic origins. It's not like that at all. It's really secure in the fact that the kinds of information that's gathered, and also how people are de-identified, so that, when it's used for research, people will not be able to track down the individual corresponding to that information.
That's really important. That's really important. Okay, let's move back to the state of the country right now.
Oh, sure.
COVID has pushed all of us to sort of do things differently and to change. I know you already mentioned that a little bit. Both of our programs have adapted to doing all of our social gatherings online. Do you see any silver lining in that?
Yeah, I really do. And at first I wasn't sure if I was just telling myself that to get through the hard times. But we've really figured out how to do things differently, than we had before. And different is not always worse. Just like we say to our community, just because you're different doesn't mean you're any less, right? So the way that COVID has challenged us is really to figure out different ways of doing things. And in that process, you learn that some of these different ways of doing things are actually better.
Right.
In the sense that if your goal is to increase people's connections, you can do that pretty darn well with some of the technology that's available.
Yeah.
So all of our programming now is completely online through video conferencing.
Yeah.
We use a lot of Zoom, for instance. And the groups that we have have been much larger. And the reach has been a lot further as well. We've had folks all the way from Texas to New Mexico, up in Washington State. So it doesn't feel, well, you have to mind the time zones, but otherwise it's almost as if you are sort of in the same space.
You've gotten to know deeper relations with people that you wouldn't have met before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's been one of the biggest best silver linings.
I have to ask you this because whenever you have a psychiatrist available and you're a parent who has a young adult who's neurodiverse, you want to get some tidbits of information out of them. COVID has been so challenging for so many people, and for so many of the young adults we work with, it's equally challenging to their families. There's some real economic and social impacts that they've had to deal with. And for our young adults who are often very impacted by anxiety and depression, this has been sometimes a toxic mix. Do you have any tips for parents or those young adults to try to continue to combat that social emotional impact that is probably going to go on for a while longer?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of like what you and I both did when COVID hit, is that we knew things were going to be different, and we didn't know how long it's going to last, right? But we had a choice about how we're going to respond, or adapt to it, So, the advice is that, really being brave and stepping out of your comfort zone, because I think that's what really, the pandemic has really pushed us all to do that, And in that process, you're finding that you can actually find new opportunities and better ways of doing it. But you have to be able to let go of some of the older things or traditional things that you've been using, and have sort of a mind of doing things differently. In fact, that notion is just because it's different doesn't mean it's any less.
Right.
It can be that it's much, much better. But with any new process, it does take some time. But once you've sort of gotten the hang of it, and mastered it, you realize that there's a whole world of opportunity out there. But it does take some work into working with the change.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's really good advice. So to wrap up our conversation, first I just want to thank you for being our primary sponsor for the Water Lantern Celebration. It's an event that's near and dear to us, and the ability to gather groups of people together to light the way for people of all abilities in our communities is so important to us, and to have your support to allow us to put this event on means a lot.
Yeah. No, it's my pleasure. It really is a beautiful thing that you're doing.
Thank you.
It makes us feel really good to support.
Yeah, we can't wait to see all those lanterns. Is there anything I didn't ask you or that you'd like to add about Spark and your collaboration with us before we have to go?
Well, I think that, back to our theme of changing how we do things and the potential opportunities that come with that. I do think that there's a lot of other things we can do, and then we've sort of co-hosted things in the past. We can certainly do that again, and it should be probably much easier, because we're not lifting heavy things or setting up complicated systems, but you can find other ways to work together. So I think that there's a lot more opportunity, that we haven't tapped yet. Spark is, there's a lot to Spark. Certainly much more than that we could actually fit in an interview like this. But what we would like to offer is webinars or workshops, for your community, to help them learn more about it and see if it makes sense for them to join or sign up or join us. And also Spark is it's something that's going to be going on for a while. So it's not sort of here today, gone tomorrow type of phenomenon. So if people have questions, our email is sparkforautism@yale.edu, and we also have a website where people can go for information, and that's www.sparkforautism.org/Yale.
That's a lot. We'll try to put that out there. It's also in our program.
Okay, great.
And I believe we have a connection to you folks on our website as well.
Oh, wonderful.
So thank you again for joining us, and we'll be seeing you when you drop off all those lanterns.
Looking forward to it.
Okay.
Thanks, Jane.
Take care. Yep.